as well as poverty alleviation and development will brief the media. And now you're watching live footage right from the venue of this press conference. As we just mentioned, officials are expected to discuss their progress in fighting against poverty, rural revitalization, and also will take questions from the media. So the event is about to start.
记者朋友们、女士们、先生们，大家上午好。
Good morning.
欢迎出席新闻中心第3场新闻发布会。
Welcome to our
今天发布的
press
主题
conference.
是乡村振兴。
Today's topic theme is rural revitalization and poverty alleviation. Over the past 7 decades, we have realized huge development in China's agricultural and rural development. What we have achieved is historic. We have gained national strength and liberation, and we have pressed ahead with poverty alleviation. We are getting closer to realizing the goal of bringing a prosperous prosperity to the country. Today we have with us Mr. Han Changfu, head of the Office of the Central Rural Work Leading Group and Minister of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, and also Mr. Liu Yongfu, Minister of the State Council Leading Group Office of Poverty Alleviation and Development. They will say a few remarks about rural revitalization and poverty alleviation, and then take your questions. We have interpretation service, and then if the questions are raised in English, we will have consecutive interpretation. Now, Mr. Han Changfu, please. Ladies and gentlemen, friends from the media, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here again. I wish to thank all of you from the press for following and supporting our works related to China's agriculture, rural areas, and farmers. On Monday, China celebrated the second Farmers' Harvest Festival, and General Secretary Xi Jinping sent a congratulatory letter to all the Chinese farmers. He said in the letter that with a strong agriculture as the foundation, we, the Chinese people, are now more confident in national development. His words is the best approval of the works in the past 70 years in promoting agricultural and rural development. Over the past 7 decades, especially since the 18th Party Congress, China has realized huge agricultural and rural development. There are indeed many things that I wish to share with you in length. But today, I will just highlight the historical achievements in the following 5 areas. First, China has managed to ensure food security for all its 1.4 billion people. To have enough food to eat has always been a very natural but basic need of the Chinese people, but all the past dynasties and governments have failed. It is only under the leadership of the Communist Party of China that we managed to ensure food security for all the Chinese people. In 1949, total grain production was only 113 million tons. But in the past 70 years, it has expanded by 4.8 times to more than 650 million tons, and has remained above that figure for 4 years in a row. In addition, there are also ample supply of edible oil, fruits and vegetables. China has fed nearly 1/5 of the global population with only 9% of the world's total cultivated land. This is a miracle in agriculture. It fully demonstrates the strength of socialist system with Chinese characteristics. Second, China has basically eradicated absolute poverty. In the early days of reform and opening up, 770 million rural population were living under the poverty line. But by the end of last year, the number was reduced to 16.6 million. We are on track to eradicate absolute poverty by 2020. People's well-being in rural areas has also seen significant changes. Per capita disposable income of rural people has registered a 40-fold increase from 1949, reaching 14,000 yuan. Over 99% of the villages are accessible by paved roads, and all the rural population are now covered by the new rural cooperative medical system, rural pension insurance scheme, and compulsory education. Chinese farmers are now living a better life. Third, China has made qualitative leaps in agricultural modernization. Agriculture production have gone through revolutionary changes with completely transformed technologies and equipment. Science and technology is now contributing 58.3% of agricultural growth. All the crop varieties have been improved. Nationwide, there is 640 million mu of high-standard cropland which have stable and high yield. Over 80% of the tilling, seeding, and harvesting in grain farming has been mechanized. As the traditional farming practice has become history, agriculture in China has entered a new stage where technology is the main engine. We are pursuing quality and green development in agriculture. We ensured a zero increase in the use of pesticide and chemical fertilizers, and we have replaced portable pesticide sprayers with drones. Now, cell phones have become a new farming tool. Farmers can have very precise control over irrigation and fertilization through the Internet of Things just by using their cell phones. Fourth, China has formulated a set of policies supporting rural and agricultural development. Since reform and opening up, China has implemented household contract responsibility system, abolished the agricultural tax that existed for more than 2,000 years, and established the agricultural subsidy system. We will extend the current rural land contracts for another 30 years. And we have put in place an institutional system for promoting rural development, and we will carry through them in the future. Fifth, China has opened up a new chapter for rural revitalization. This is a strategy put forward at the 19th Party Congress. It will be another historic mission after we ensure the basic needs of the people and eradicate poverty. It serves as an overarching objective in the new era. Over the past 2 years, we have started its implementation. Plans and policies have been formulated and to advance coordinated development of rural areas. Of all the valuable experience we've gained over the past 70 years, I believe the following two are very important. First, we have all along adhered to the leadership of the Communist Party of China, which has ensured the reform and development measures are always carried out along the right track. And second, we have put our farmers front and center, respected their entrepreneurship, protected and mobilized their initiative and creativity. Now, works related to agriculture, farmers, and rural areas are enjoying sustained progress. We will continue to implement Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, particularly the important instructions made by the General Secretary, prioritize agricultural and rural development, and develop our agriculture, build a beautiful countryside, and enable a better life of our farmers. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Han. Now, I would like to invite Minister Liu for his opening remarks.
Friends from the press, good morning. Thank you very much for your coverage of and support for China's poverty reduction work. Welcome to today's press conference. We have already provided you some background information. Now I would like to give you a brief introduction to our work. In a few days' time, the Chinese people will celebrate the 70th anniversary of the founding of the PRC. In the past 70 years, the CPC has led the Chinese people to take solid and pioneering steps to remove absolute poverty in the rural areas of the most populous nation in the world. We have taken a poverty reduction and development path with Chinese features and created a miracle in the history of China and the world. Before the founding of the PRC, we were poor and weak. The CPC and the Chinese government have put people first. I work hard to remove poverty and improve people's lives and achieve common prosperity And this has been our abiding commitment. We have focused on economic development, advanced reform and opening up, and ensured sound and steady economic and social progress, thus laying solid material basis for major poverty reduction. We have upheld the leading role of the CPC and the government, incorporated poverty reduction in our overall development strategy, made clear the objectives and standards in different stages, and conducted major campaigns of poverty reduction. Thirdly, we have kept to a development-oriented approach, improved infrastructure and social programs of poor areas, and enhanced the self-development capacity of poor regions and population. Fourth, we have put the efforts of all stakeholders and formed a cross-region, cross-department, whole-of-society poverty reduction system. We have also adopted special policies for poor people and supported them wherever possible. And we have adopted both universally beneficial and special policies. In particular, since the 18th Party Congress, the CPC Central Committee, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, have taken poverty reduction as a key task and indicator for building a well-off society, and has waged the battle against poverty. We must ensure that by 2020, all rural residents living below the current poverty line will be lifted out of poverty, and poverty will be removed in all poor counties and regions. We have adopted the basic strategy of targeted poverty reduction. We have formulated unconventional policies and set up a relevant system. Under the leadership of General Secretary Xi, party secretaries at provincial, city, county, township, and village levels have all got directly involved. After 6 years of hard work, we have made decisive progress and historic achievements. First, targeted poverty reduction has been effective. Rural poor population has decreased substantially. We will soon remove absolute poverty in rural areas. From 2013 to 2018, a total of over 18 million poor people have got out of poverty, which means 10 million for every year. Poverty headcount ratio dropped from 10% to 1.7%. Two, poor areas have advanced economic and social development and made new progress. Infrastructure and public services in poor areas have improved substantially, and their distinctive industries have grown substantially. The living quality of the poor people has increased. The GDP of poor areas grew 2 percentage points higher than national average. And farmers' disposable income increased rapidly. And that is higher, 2.3 percentage points higher than the national average. In addition, primary level party organizations in rural areas have become more united and effective. Their governance ability has enhanced greatly, and their bond with the people has strengthened. In this way, the party's governance foundation in rural areas has been further consolidated. Thirdly, China's poverty reduction has helped accelerate that of the whole world. China has presented its proposal and contribution to the world. China is the first developing country to achieve the poverty reduction goal of UN MDGs, and our targeted poverty reduction has ushered in a path with Chinese features and contributed China's wisdom and proposal to the world. It is predicted that by the end of this year, 95% of our poor population and 90% of poor counties will get rid of poverty. And with our hard work, next year, absolute poverty, which has been a problem for thousands of years in China, will be resolved. Under the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, we are very confident that we will overcome difficulties and win the battle against poverty. These are my opening remarks. Now I would be happy to answer your questions on poverty reduction. Thank you.
好，谢谢刘永富先生。
Thank you, Minister Liu.
下面进入答问环节。
Now the floor
请
is
大家
open.
围绕本场发布会的主题进行提问。
Please raise your
提问
questions
的时候，
under the
通报
topic
一下
of this
自己
press
所代
conference.
表的。
Please identify yourselves before raising the questions. Now the floor is open.
中间第二排头上这位男记者，对。
谢谢。中新社记者提问：我国有近14亿人口，粮食安全一直是社会高度
With
关
China
注的问
News
题。
Service,
请问韩部长，
we
目前
have
我国粮食安
1.4
全
billion
状
people
况
in
如何？
China,
另外，
and
今年
food
发生的草
security
地摊业
has
额
been
会
of
不会影响到
great
粮食产量？
interest for a lot of people. And could you please tell us about the food security situation, as well as the situation about the fall armyworm? Thank you.
This is indeed an important question. The party and the country has always attached tremendous importance and make it a priority when it comes to food supply for our people. General Secretary Xi Jinping emphasized for multiple times that ensuring food security is an ongoing process that requires unremitting efforts. Efforts must not be relaxed. Since 2004, grain production achieved a record-breaking 15-year-long harvest, with 650 million metric tons of grain supply in the past 4 years. Per capita terms, 470 kilograms is way beyond the line set by the FAO. I think there are 3 reasons. First, we've strengthened policy support. We are committed to consolidating basic operation system in rural areas, cultivating new entities of operation, and developing operation on an appropriate scale. In addition, favorable policies such as subsidies for soil conservation of farmland, rewards for high-yielding counties, and subsidies for producers have effectively galvanized efforts by the local government to focus on agriculture and food production, and by farmers to grow crops. Secondly, we also ensure the areas and quality of cropland. Quantity and quality are both important. Across the country, we've carved out 1.058 billion mu for crop growing and for protecting key agricultural produce. We're also committed to building 80 million mu of high-quality farmland on an annual basis. If we can achieve a 1 billion mu, we can change the scenario whereby we need to rely on the weather and natural conditions. Third, technologies are brought to bear, which include research and development and technological promotion. The varieties of major crops have been upgraded in large scale 5 to 6 times. Green, high-yielding, and efficient technologies have also been promoted. Now, per unit grain yield was increased across the country, 374.7 kilograms, around 5 times than that of the time of the founding of New China. You mentioned this year, well, summer grain crops and early season rice have been harvested. Autumn grain crops were sowed in roughly the same areas last year, and they are growing well. We've already harvested 30% of autumn crops. According to our survey, provided that there's no major disaster such as typhoon, we are set to embrace another year of harvest, reaching the 650 million metric tons mark for the 5th year. You also mentioned fall armyworm. It's drawn wide societal attention. We are also paying tremendous attention to this. These type of worm do migrate, afflicting crops such as corns. Around 20 provinces have reported to have detected this army worm, but only around 2 million move land were afflicted. This is mainly credited to timely prevention and effective measures. We have radar in the air, equipment on land. We'll extirpate the worm when we see them. We have reined in these type of phenomenon. But as I mentioned just now, they do migrate and might return next year. That's why we need a long-term mechanism. Well, overall, food security has always been a top priority for our department. Demand for grain, which is a rigid demand, is still on the rise. Supply of grain is balanced and yet stretched. We need to still commit ourselves to the national food security strategy, advance land and technology-enabled grain production, work to maintain stable output and improve structure of grain supply. Last night, news came out and it covers the problem of high-quality wheat. Soybeans and high-quality wheat and their supplies also need to be guaranteed. As long as we can do so, we can ensure the food supply for our people firmly in our own hands. Next question.
右区第二排这位男记者。
谢谢主持人，我是中国纪检监察报记者。
Thank you. From 纪检监察 paper.
游永富主任。
I have two questions for Minister Liu. Since the 18th CPC National Congress, there have been in total 82.39 million people in 436 counties lifted out of poverty. My question is how to prevent statistic-oriented or fake poverty, how to consolidate and prevent people from redescending into poverty. And also, this year, there are also discussions on the conduct of poverty alleviation. What's the progress, and how can we consolidate the progress? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. It is very important to prevent the manipulation of numbers and falsification of poverty reduction, and we need to work hard in three aspects. Number one, our poverty alleviation should reach those who truly need it and deliver genuine outcomes. And this is what we need to do in our poverty alleviation work. This requires us that we need to be practical and solid in our work, and the outcomes of our work need to be real as well. Number two, we need to make very clear the standards and procedures of getting out of poverty, and we need to carry out a very strict evaluation. Whether relevant people have met the standards of getting out of poverty, whether relevant procedures have been observed and followed, these things need to be evaluated very carefully. Relevant numbers need to be verified. And the society need to supervise the whole process, and the outcomes of our work need to be real. And thirdly, for those people who are engaged in manipulation of numbers, when we find relevant cases, we will redress them and hold relevant people to account. And this is what we have done to prevent manipulation of numbers and falsification of poverty reduction. Thanks to our efforts in the past few years, our work has been very effective. You also mentioned how we can consolidate the outcomes of poverty reduction. Well, for starters, we need to make sure that our work is real and tangible. And number two, after getting out of poverty, we need to keep stable the current policies. And we need to continue with relevant mechanisms and policies. And thirdly, we need to look to the long term, and we need to develop industries and create jobs for the rural people. In this way, people who have already got got out of poverty will live a decent life. And number 4, for those people who have returned to poverty, we will provide timely support for them. So these are basically the measures that we have taken. But due to some unexpected instances, including some natural disasters, some people have returned to poverty, and some people have got poor, and this is natural. For these people, we have paid great attention, and we have carried out relevant survey over these types of population. In the past couple of years, people returning to poverty has decreased. In 2016, that was roughly about 600,000, and now it is only 100,000. So our measures have been effective in ensuring that less and less people return to poverty. And another point in your question is about how to improve our conduct and prevent corruption in poverty reduction. Well, let me say this. Poverty reduction requires real and tangible work, and there shouldn't be corruption. We must have very effective and strict conduct to ensure the success of our work. So in 2018, the central government has carried out relevant campaigns to redress corruption in poverty reduction, and the leading group on poverty reduction of the State Council has carried out very effective measures to improve the conduct of poverty reduction. The purpose is to ensure accountability, policy implementation, and work implementation. And at the moment, generally speaking, the progress is good, and our work has been effective, and people up and down the country recognize the conduct of work of our poverty reduction cadres. Having said that, we still see that some people are not really doing practical and solid work, and for these people we would demote them, remove them, and dismiss them whenever needed. And for those people who have done a good job, we would promote them, and in this way would establish the good and sound standards for the personnel and organization. And some officials, due to their poor performance in poverty reduction, has been criticized and dismissed. And generally speaking, corruption in poverty reduction are happening less and less. Irregular use of funds has decreased from over 10% in previous years to the current less than 1%. And there are less officials who are punished due to corruption in poverty reduction. In addition, the primary level officials involved in poverty reduction have made great contribution, and some of them have even given their lives. They not only do solid work and even paid great sacrifices. By the end of June this year, the number of officials who died in poverty reduction has reached over 770. Next question, please. Thank you. With Yomiuri News. The focus of poverty reduction is on sustainable development and create more jobs for the farmers. I have done an interview in the rural area, and I have noted that some farmers do not have professional knowledge. So my question is, what is the scale of rural industrial development across the country. For these new rural industries, what are your expectations and arrangements? Thank you.
I think I can take your question first, and then I'll give the microphone to Minister Liu. I think you asked about how we can improve poverty alleviation through developing of industries and new industries in rural areas. General Secretary Xi Jinping stressed that we need to have integrated work in promoting poverty alleviation. So the development of industry and the encouragement of entrepreneurship would be the most effective way in poverty alleviation. In our practice, as long as we have sound and good industry, and we encourage the participation of poor rural residents, we can prevent a relapse into poverty. I can share with you some of the data. We have over 100,000 different kind of industry bases in impoverished areas. So we have farmers plus cooperatives, a mode for poverty reduction, and we have over 4,000 expert groups in different areas with over 260,000 experts working in different parts of China in poverty alleviation. So the rural disposable income was over 5,000 yuan last year, so an increase of around 8% than the previous year, even 1.8 percentage points higher than the national average. But we've also noticed that the most difficult challenge in poverty reduction is how we can put in place a long-term development of relevant industries and have a stable mode of poverty reduction. Because in general, the poverty reduction industries are not that large in scale, and some of them are not very competitive. As we enter the final stage of our fight against poverty, we are making some earnest studies. We are learning from the experience in the past. We need to give priorities to some specialized or to local strengths of different areas. For example, they may have some strengths in a specific area according to local features. And also we need to better connect production and the sales of the production. Once we have good products, we need to sell them to the market. So we need to have better logistics, better marketing for those products. So we need to integrate the chain of the industry, different parts of the industry. So we are having different kind of promotion events, even having very large-scale online promotion, encouraging different big companies to be part of the poverty alleviation work, and encourage them to set up field offices in the impoverished areas. And also we need to better connect people's interests in this work to encourage more impoverished households to be part of the job. We need to encourage the development of industries. We need to develop relevant industrial parks, so we can have more poor rural families to be part of the job. If they are capable, they can be part of the production. If they are not yet capable, they can receive more assistance and funding assistance from the government to share in the benefits. The issue that you mentioned is a priority in our poverty reduction, and in the long run, we will better coordinate our efforts in poverty reduction and rural revitalization so that we can ensure the sustained income of rural residents and prevent a relapse into poverty. I just wish to add a few things. Whether it is about encouraging farmers to start new business, or our poverty reduction work in the rural areas, there are always difficulties and problems. Some of them are quite serious because some of the poor rural families, they try to raise livestock, but the animals may get sick and die. Some of them try to plant fruit trees, but they do not have adequate agricultural technologies, so they may not have a very good yield and harvest. To address this problem, we have the following measures. First is to have training programs for them, to train those poor rural farmers, to have on-site training programs so that they have better skills at their work. And also we need to change their mindset, to give them more knowledge and to let them to be more aware of marketing skills. Once they receive training, they could be capable of doing their own business, but it will be still difficult for them to start a company. Therefore, we have training programs for some of the leaders in poverty reduction. Our purpose is to train around 40 to 50,000 professionals in starting those companies. Currently, we have trained over 30,000 of them, so they are able, 300,000 of them, so they are able to start companies to benefit more farmers. So once, if we have a farmer who wishes to start a business, they need some money for their new business, and then the government can give them some preferential policies, very low interest lending and credit. They are entitled to such kind of preferential policies for 3 years. So this policy has been rolled out in over 14 million households. So nearly half of the poor families have received such kind of funding support. And also we carried out policy guidance. We share with them some of the advanced experiences that they can learn from. We share with them the success stories of other farmers. And also, we encourage the participation of more professionals. As we develop the industries, we wish to encourage the participation of more poor population. Once we combine the training of the poor population and the professionals and the local leaders, we can be successful in this job.
左区第6排那个黑颜色衣服的男记者。
谢谢主持人。我是人民日报人民
Thank
网记
you very
者。
much from
乡
People's
村实施
Daily.
乡村振兴战略提出已经快2年时间
It has
了。
been almost 2 years
请问
since
中
the
央农业农部在实施
formalization of
推进战略
the
的过程中采取了
rural
哪些措施
revitalization policy. What are the measures taken and what are the results?
好，谢谢你这个问题。
Thank you for your question.
党的十九大提出来呢，实施乡村振兴战略。
Rural vitalization strategy was adopted 2 years ago at the 19th Party Congress. General Secretary Xi said that this is the overall plan for agricultural work in the new era. We need to advance revitalization of industry, personnel, culture, ecosystem, and organization in rural areas.
那么这2年来
In
呢，
the past couple of years,
这个由于党中央高度重视，
the central government has paid great attention to this work, and various localities have also taken strong
有些
measures.
方面取得了
Our work has
明显
got
成
off to a
效。
good start.
那么在这个过程中呢，
And in this process,
主要是抓了这么几件
we
事
have
情。
focused on the following
一是
aspects.
科学
Number
制定规
one,
划，
make well-conceived
这个中央
plans.
印发了全
The
国
central
的乡村
government
振兴战
has
略。
issued the national rural vitalization strategy with many major projects, programs, and plans, including the 3-year action plan for improving the living environment in rural areas. Our 31 provinces have adopted their own provincial-level rural vitalization strategy, and most cities and counties have their plans as well. So from the central to the local governments, the blueprint and the roadmap have been made very clear. In the afternoon, I will attend a meeting in Xintai City of Hebei, and the meeting is on rural planning. So how to promote the development of villages is very important for us. We need to have very good plans to advance rural development in a well-conceived manner. So this is the first point. The second point is to share Zhejiang's experience. When General Secretary Xi was working in Zhejiang, he personally adopted the Green Rural Revival Program. In this way, Zhejiang has produced a lot of beautiful and livable villages, setting a good example to other places. At the moment, other places have sent their representatives to Zhejiang to learn from Zhejiang's experience. Well, they can find so many places to learn the rural development experience. So for us, we have summed up the experience of Zhejiang, and the central government has shared that experience with different provinces in China. And Zhejiang is working hard to make itself a demonstration province for rural vitalization, thus charting the course for other places. Number 3, advance specific work. Last year, our focus was on improving the layout of our rural work. The general requirement is to achieve thriving business, pleasant living environment, social etiquette and civility, effective governance and prosperity in the rural areas. And based on that, the central government has formulated guiding principles on promoting rural industries, improving the living environment, strengthening rural governance, and enhancing social etiquette and civility. And in recent years, we have seen a large number of distinctive rural industries. Last year, rural tourism revenue exceeded 800 billion yuan, and online sales of agricultural products approached 300 billion yuan. In addition, we are also carrying out the toilet revolution campaign in rural areas. Last year and this year, 10 million toilets have been renovated in rural areas. In addition, we have also selected 100 counties, 100 townships, and 1,000 villages to carry out demonstration pilots for a rural governance system. Number 4, strengthen institutional support. Recently, the central government issued the CPC regulations on rural work, which is the first of its kind in the history of the party. This policy has provided organizational and political support for rural revitalization. We're also working together with other departments to study the possibility of formulating a plan to increase the spending of proceeds from the transfer of land use rights on agriculture and rural areas. We will also establish the evaluation system on rural vitalization and ensure that party secretaries at 5 levels of government can get involved in rural vitalization. And at the moment, we are following the requirements of the CPC Central Committee, and the CPC Central Committee has made clear the objectives for 2020, 2035, and 2050. We need to follow these objectives and take solid work. Our priority at the moment is that by 2020, we will achieve the objective of rural revitalization as we complete the building of a moderately prosperous society in all respects next year. Next question, please.
好的，感谢主持人，我是中央广播电视总台央视农业农村频道的记者。我想问刘永富主任一个问题：到2020年稳步实现农村贫困人口
And we need to meet the basic needs of the rural people, and this is the basic requirement for poverty reduction. In April this year, General Secretary Xi held a workshop on such work and made specific arrangements for such work. So could you please give us an update on the progress of the work? Thank you.
这个两不愁三保障啊，是这一次脱贫的这个核心指标。
One of the core criteria of poverty alleviation is to meet the people's basic need. We need to address absolute poverty. There are 3 standards. Income need to reach around 4,000 RMB, and people have access to clothing and food as well as safe drinking water. Number 3, we have also need to ensure people have access to compulsory education, basic medical services, and safe housing.
如果达不到这个标准，就不仅是影响着我们脱贫攻坚的质量。
Failing to meet these criteria means that we haven't accomplished the task to lift people out of poverty. We also need to leave no stones unturned. This April, General Secretary Xi Jinping hosted a meeting in Chongqing. There are a few things we need to follow through. First, we also need to commit ourselves to these standards. We cannot artificially bring up the standards to the extent that it does not meet our country's conditions. On the other hand, we must not lower the standards, which will weigh on the quality of poverty alleviation and affect people's satisfaction. So, access to compulsory education means that the 9-year compulsory education need to be extended to children of school age. They need to have access to school and also need to have access to going to schools. Basic medical services means that basic medical care insurance, serious illness insurance, and medical assistance will be extended to the impoverished. Those who suffer from common or chronic diseases can receive timely treatment in county, town, or village level Tier 3 medical institutions. We also need to address the high cost of medical services. Access to housing, we need to also inspect the quality of their houses. We have 4 tiers. A, B, level A and level B means the houses are safe. C level means the houses need to be renovated, and D level means that the houses need to be rebuilt. These are the basic standards. And when it comes to safe drinking water, people need to not only have access to drinking water, but also the water need to be safe according to local standards. These are the standards, and local governments can specify the standards. Secondly, we also need to fulfill responsibilities. It is coordinated by the central government. Relevant departments or departments overseeing relevant work need to offer guidance. The provincial level government needs to take general responsibility, make specific plans, and organize. At municipal, city, or town level, will implement and follow through on the guidances. Household by household and person by person, we need to lift these people out of poverty. Third, we need to achieve this end. Since April, the entire country have conducted surveys and have figured that the basic living needs those who do not have access to compulsory education, medical services, and safe housing, over 5 million people still don't have access to these services. Some of them are registered, some of them are not. It is not entirely inaccurate statistics. Now, among them, 3.1 million have been taken care of. 1.7 million are still untaken care of. We need to resolve this problem within this year. Thank you. Next question, please.
Thank
you. From Hong Kong, Bohemian Magazine. Since last year, amendments to the land management law and to the rural contract law were enacted. My question is, could you please introduce the progress and future plans in deepening reform of the rural land system?
You raise a very important and fundamental question regarding our work. It has drawn the concern of the whole society. Land is the source of agriculture and the lifeblood of farmers. China has realized fast development in agriculture and saw harmony in our rural areas. One of the main reasons is that we have long been committed to the household contract responsibility system. This has brought stability to the rural production system. I think all of us know that rural reform in China started with land reforms. So going forward, if we are going to deepen our land reforms and rural reforms, we must manage well the relationship between farmers and their land. So there are three key points that we need to pay attention to. First is the works related to contracted land. We have two policies regarding this: the separation of ownership, contract, and management rights, and the extension of the contract for another 30 years. The first policy aims to reaffirm the collective ownership, give farmers the rights to contract, and leverage the business potentials of the land so that we can together realize the full potentials of rural land and also boost the development of new type of business modes. By the end of last year, nearly 540 million mu of arable land have been contracted, and by over 7,200 rural households. But also other stakeholders have also been participating in this process. And for the second policy, the 30-year extension after the expiration of the second round of contract, announced at the 19th Party Congress, is intended to be a message of assurance to the farmers. It has also been included in the newly amended land management law. So starting from the first round of land contract, there will be 75 years of stable contract for China's rural land, which means that people's expectations will be quite stable. As we speak, the nationwide confirmation and registration of current land contract has basically been completed. And on that basis, starting from next year, we will run some pilot projects in some of the counties and using that experience to formulate supporting policies and measures for this contract extension. so that we can ensure a smooth implementation of this major reform policy. And then we need to pay attention to works related to rural collective land for development purposes. According to the land management law, this type of land could be marketed as long as it conforms to government overall planning, legally registered, and has the support of over 2/3 of the members of the collective group. This is a major policy creation because we know that in the past, those land cannot be marketed. So the preliminary estimate is that we have around 42 million mu of such land. This is potentially a huge source of wealth for farmers and also a pillar supporting the rural collective economy. We must ensure its proper and successful management. And then the third key area is about the rural residential land. This is a very important property of farmers because most of the Chinese farmers, they have rural residential land. After the latest round of reform, my ministry is now in charge of the reform and management of rural residential land. Since 2015, pilot reform projects have been carried out in 33 counties. Because this type of land bears on the immediate interests of farmers as well as the stability of rural areas, we must be very careful in proceeding the work. We intend to extend the pilot projects to some more counties. And the focus will be to run the separation of the three rights to ensure collective ownership, give farmers contract rights, and also leverage the business potentials of the land to explore a proper way to boost rural revitalization. So our focus will be around the above-mentioned three areas, and we believe reforms in these areas will contribute to the overall rural development of China. For time's sake, we will have the last question.
中区第三排，左边第三位女记者。
谢谢主持人。
Thank you very much. From Economic Daily, impoverished area is a key issue of attention. In 2017, General Secretary Xi Jinping gave specific instruction in this work. What are the progress and what are the future plans?
现在我们记者朋友对脱贫攻坚
I
都
think
非常熟悉啊。
Our
问题不多，这是
friends
社会
from the
问题
press, you are very familiar with works related to poverty reduction. You've raised very important question, though it's the last one for today's press conference.
是千百年来形成的。
Impoverished areas, they have different reasons for being a poor area, and the reasons lasted for the past thousands of years.
深度贫困地区把它最后攻下来。
We have not yet tackled the problems affecting the impoverished areas, and whether we can succeed in the coming few years bears on whether we can complete the overall national strategy of poverty alleviation. We must prevent the impoverished areas from affecting us in completing the overall objective of poverty alleviation. General Secretary Xi Jinping gave very specific instructions, and we have received guidance from the central government and the State Council. So we have identified the plan for our work. So the government will give the support to the three regions and the three prefectures in 6 provinces, including Sichuan, Xinjiang, Tibet, Yunnan, Gansu. And then we have identified some more deeply impoverished counties, and they are the responsibility of relevant provinces. The central government and relevant agencies must give policy support and guidance to those areas, and the eastern regions of China must give them support to their partners in the impoverished areas. So all of the country, we must act and give coordinated efforts to do the poverty alleviation. And outside the 3 regions and the 3 prefectures, we've also identified some more impoverished areas. For example, the Zhaotong region in Yunnan province and the Bijie in Guizhou province. So there are some additional deeply impoverished areas in addition to the 3 regions and the 3 prefectures. Once we've identified those impoverished areas, local governments must work out specific plans for poverty alleviation. And currently, all the plans have been rolled out. And then we must step up our support. In those deeply impoverished areas, we must step up our efforts. At the central and provincial level, we will give more human resource support and financial support. For example, the Liangshan prefecture of Sichuan province over 5,700 professionals are sent to the Liangshan prefecture from different parts of Sichuan province to support their work in poverty reduction. They work daily in those local villages. And also the government have been stepping up their financial input. It has been 20 billion yuan last year and additional 20 billion yuan this year, among which 13.5 billion have been allocated to the 3 regions and 3 prefectures, accounting for around 65% of the total allocation. And we have seen very effective results. We have a plan in place, and all the works and applications have been good. They are all being carried out according to schedule. Nearly 80% of the intended investment have been put in place, although we are still 1 year ahead before the conclusion of the 3-year plan. And last year, in the 3 regions and the 3 prefectures, in those regions, 1.33 people worked out of poverty just last year. So it's faster than the national average because we have stepped up our efforts. The poverty rate was lowered even faster, 3.3 percentage points, faster than the average of Western China. But we should never relax our efforts. These impoverished regions remain the focus of our work, and we must pay special attention to some of the specific areas. Thank you very much for your attention. That's the end of today's press conference. Thank you very much.
That was a press conference on China's rural development and poverty alleviation in the past 7 decades. Senior officials introduced the historic achievements made so far and also addressed some very sharp challenges ahead. And our reporter Liu Yang has been following that very closely, and let's cross live to her. Hello Liu Yang, you're right at that venue of the press conference. So rural development and poverty alleviation, 2 big issues, but from that conference we could tell there are quite some interconnectivity between the 2. Tell us more about the highlights.
Yes, as Agriculture Minister Han Changfu said, one of the historical achievements for China is in the past 70 years, China has managed to ensure food security for a population of 1.4 billion. China has created a miracle in the world history of agriculture by successfully feeding 20% of the global population. With only 9% of the world's total cultivated land, the country has almost eradicated absolute poverty in rural area, China contributes more than 70% to the poverty reduction in the world. From the end of 2015 to the end of 2018, the number of people living in poverty in rural areas decreased from 55 million to 16 million. It's worth mentioning in the past several years, there was an increasing support for women, for children, and disabled people in rural areas. By the end of 2018, nearly $57 billion of guaranteed loans have been granted the support of 6 million women to start their own business. And we have also seen some improvement in rural infrastructure after the rural revitalization strategy started last year, including 4G networks, logistics, services, and as more industries set up, more jobs created, and many returned migrant workers start their own businesses back in their hometown, and that made many left behind the children finally get together with their parents. Having said that, all of the amazing achievements, China is still the largest developing country in the world. In the most, with the most population, unbalanced and inadequate development is the principal contradictions at present. So for the long run, relatively poverty will still exist. But as you can see, Pendeng, as you heard from the entire press briefing, the achievement is absolutely amazing. Get back to you, Pendeng.
Thank you very much, our reporter Liu Yang in Beijing. And of course, we'll provide you with more details on this press conference on a Global Watch coming up in about 60 minutes. You're watching The World Today on CGTN. Stay with us.